It is time to give you an update. First of all, we need to talk about the M6 and what happened on the last day in Switzerland. I had planned to visit one last spot before heading back. The weather conditions looked promising and I was very curious to see this place in person because it might be the most picturesque glacier lake in the Alps. At some point the path uphill turned into a steep scree field, which was a bit challenging to cross. The sunrise, however, was imminent and didn't allow to slow down. And with the first beams of light I accomplished the last meters to the isolated glacier lake. As impressive as it looks from the aerial perspective, I soon realized that it was more challenging to capture the isolation of the glacier lake on film. The area I could walk around in front of the lake was actually quite small and I did not want to climb the mountain walls next to me because the rocks were loose and you could see small rocks breaking off every once in a while. It really didn't seem like a good idea to move away from the safe zone, so I didn't, and I tried to make the best out of it. This is a situation where you have to become creative as a photographer. You cannot move around a lot to adapt your perspective and your widest lens is a 35mm lens. I honestly would have been happy with my results if my Leica didn't break down at that moment. There was no sign that anything was wrong with my camera while taking the images. I first realized it when I got my scans back from the lab. Nearly half of the images from that day looked like this. And I soon found out that I had a sticky shutter. I don't want to act like I wasn't disappointed, but I still had at least a couple of pictures that were not damaged. And regarding the circumstances, having at least a few good images is definitely a win. So does that mean that the reputation of the everlasting durability and high quality of Leica cameras is busted? Well, certainly not. My version of the Leica M6 is about 30 years old and at that point rubber starts to deteriorate. This is what happened on the inside of the backplate and what probably caused the shutter to get sticky as well. Right now the M6 has not been repaired yet because I was working on another project which I'm going to talk about later. Another reason is that the repair costs from Leica manufacturing are beyond my budget and I'm looking for an external repair solution with a good reputation. Apart from the trouble with my M6, I took part in the Contemporary Art Ruhr exhibition, which took place in the World Heritage Site Zeche Zollverein in Essen, Germany. The location used to be one of the biggest industrial mining complexes in Europe and today functions as a museum and a place for cultural events. The Contemporary Art Ruhr Fair displays all sorts of artists, from sculptures and installations to photography and paintings, and for me it was a great first experience of displaying some of my images. As it was not a solo exhibition, I didn't feel too much pressure, and I have to say that what I enjoyed most was talking to people in person and sharing some insights. Some people just started to guess what they were seeing, and remember, the whole art fair contained many variations of art, so for a random visitor who's not into photography, it wasn't even clear that my images were photographs. This led to very creative guessing about what my pictures could display, from copper engravings to bacteria under a microscope. It was even more fun to then explain what they were actually seeing and to point out small details like off-road vehicle tire tracks or footprints. This kind of plot twists from perception to reality often caused some kind of a wow effect that led to further questions about the landscape itself. In this case, my images displayed the Colorado River Delta. The experience I just described is part of the concept of my aerial photography. I'm trying to document landscapes and natural phenomena in an aesthetically pleasing and abstract form to raise interest about what the viewers are actually seeing. To see that my concept works not only in my mind, but that it is also perceived by others really meant a lot to me, and for me personally, it was a great takeaway from the exhibition. Talking about something else, I replaced my Sony A7R IV with the Fujifilm GFX 100S. This happened already at the beginning of the year, where I took the GFX on a winter day trip to get comfortable with it. I honestly don't have anything bad to say about the Sony, but I have to admit that I noticed a substantial difference when looking at the results from the GFX. Especially the details and image quality are on another level. I want to point out though that the Sony A7R IV is already more than you need for landscape photography. The colors are looking very good, the autofocus is actually better than the autofocus of the GFX, and the image quality is more than solid. The whole setup with the new 24-70 G Master Mark II has a very small overall footprint and is easy to carry. However, for advanced aerial photography, you need some special features to get the most out of your projects. And this is exactly what the GFX 100S can provide. I'm talking about a very high amount of details combined with in-body image stabilization. Why is this so important for aerial photography? Well, let's compare aerial photography with landscape photography, which are both categories where a higher megapixel count is appreciated. In most cases for landscape photography, you want to have a higher megapixel count to see details of things we already know what they are. Taking a look at this image, for example, we can all see that this is a mountain. A higher megapixel count enables us to see more details like small rocks, but we still already know that we are looking at a mountain. More details don't drastically change our perception of the image. Or with other words, we don't need a lot of megapixels to recognize the mountain as such. This, however, is not the case for aerial photography. Often one can only recognize what they see by taking a closer look and by searching for details the viewer can relate to, like small plants, trees, footprints, or the fine texture of a water surface. Here it is sometimes vital to have fine details to recognize what you are actually looking at. Let's take another look at one example. At first sight, it is not obvious what you can see here. But we can zoom in and see the texture of sand, water, and the best indicator in this case are these goats which are crossing the dune. Same goes for this one. We can see that it is some kind of a landscape. But to really grasp which kind of landscape it is, we need to identify some objects. We can find trees, footsteps, vegetation, and this time a bunch of cows wandering through the sand. And with these first images from Brazil, I'm going to leave you for today.
that's average.